She's a participant in the Institute for Black Justice's ACES Young Adult Leadership Program, and that is a program that seeks to identify and inspire the next generation of social justice leaders. She is also a 2023 graduate of the IBJ Trines Family Advocacy Program, and as I mentioned, mother to beautiful baby boy Malachi. Kalia works as a certified peer mentor, even while launching her career as a singer and songwriter. So I invite you to exchange your attention for Kalia's talents and quiet our voices so that we might fully hear and enjoy hers.
My voice is loud enough. This first song that I'll sing is not by me, it's not my lyrics, but it's just a song that I write lately. And I love This one is a song that I wrote. This is my first song ever doing. And this is for a program that I was enrolled in, the Bridge Music Project. Yeah, here it's a This one's called, everybody calls it Toes Out. I don't know how they came up with that for the title. I thought it was Beach Day. That's the title of the name of the song. But everybody just resonates with Toes Out. You might understand why, you might see why.
But thank you for your patience and move closer if you can. So once again, I'm Christy Gladhill. I'm happy to see you all here today. I'm happy and excited and honored, and it's my pleasure to be part of this powerful program, this collaboration between the Conversation 253 and the Institute for Black Justice. That's what we're doing here today. And this is your official welcome to Speaking Truth to Power, Illuminating Bias in the Civil Justice System. And in just a few moments, we'll introduce our panelists and moderator. But before we do that, I wanted to invite you just to pause for a moment so that we can do a land and labor acknowledgement. I'd like to read this to you as we just pause and think about where we are and who we are. So we acknowledge that the Evergreen State College Tacoma campus stands on the traditional homelands of the Puyallup tribe. to all the people have lived on and stewarded these lands since the beginning of time, and they continue to do so today. We also pause to remember that our country is built on the labor of free people of African origins who were kidnapped, enslaved, dehumanized, and oppressed for centuries. We recognize the continued contribution made by them and their survivors, including many of you. We also acknowledge all immigrant labor, those who came voluntarily and involuntarily, those who were trafficked or forced from their homes, documented and undocumented peoples who all contributed to the building of this country and who continue to serve even now within our labor force. And finally, we acknowledge the paid and volunteer team at the Institute for Black Justice and the Conversation 253, also the Tacoma Democratic Socialists, and the Evergreen State College Tacoma, including Dr. Key, who is behind the scenes here helping us set up this whole entire event. So I think maybe he can hear us tonight. All of these people together have been, they're behind the kitchen, they're behind the door, they're behind the windows, they've been here putting this event together. So let's thank them all.
Yeah.
All right. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce someone to you who I just met. Fatima Mateen will lead the blessing ceremony for this thought-provoking event tonight. And after you've heard from her, the next voice you hear will be that of Carol Mitchell, our very own Carol Mitchell, founder and the director of advocacy for the Institute for Black Justice. She's also today's moderator of our panel discussion. So, Fatima Mateen.
Blessings, everybody. Blessings, gratitude, abundant gratitude and blessings. I want to say that we are the mic, each and every one of us. In the beginning, we own the ritual, and then the ritual owned us. So we have this amazing opportunity today. We give thanks to our most gracious, compassionate Creator. He blessed us with this day and this moment. This is all we have, this moment. And we give thanks for that. We give thanks for the opportunity to build on the ancestral circle that we are in. And it just so happened, what an amazing divine arrangement. Look at this shrine. Take a moment to breathe in and out in this moment, because this is indeed a very power-filled circle of energy. Each and every one of you was supposed to be here today. We're representing those here seen and those unseen. And I want to witness and greet each and every one of you with peace, love, light, and blessings. As we think about the freedom fighters and the fierce voices in our own families, those who have passed, transitioned in another energy form, we want to take a moment to invite your family, friends, loved ones, spiritual icons into this space, the memory. Oftentimes, life distracts us. Everyday survival, pain, etc. And we often do not think of those who have walked this planet. But the time has come where we must, and we will, take some time to think about the life that you are attributing your life to, of those who you honored and respected, those who shed blood and tears and sweat, so that you and those after you, 7+ generations out, family members and nieces and nephews and grandchildren that you won't meet, but every move you make, in every action, in every voice that you are and become is a tribute to their life. That is the ancestral circle. I would like to invite you to look at this beautiful, incredible, phenomenal art. It's a shrine, it's a temple, it's a museum, it's a library. And every piece played a role in ceremony, ritual, prayer, dance, music, intentions, vibrations, frequencies. And it's no coincidence that we are monks. So this circle that you imagine that we're all in is exactly the circle of the human family. So I would like to invite what I love, Dr. Keith, with the music that you heard coming in. What a connection from the motherland to our everyday contemporary life. The music that your grandparents and foreparents created from their life, from their daily work and worship, okay? So I would like to invite the incredible Phyllis Wheaton, Ashe. Also Nat Turner. These were fierce fighters in our history, in our community. It's real. Maggie Lena Walker, Ashe, to be honest. Booker T. Washington, and some of the other amazing freedom fighters who gave their all and dreamed and knew that we were coming, So I just want to encourage you to understand that you have the opportunity to create a new pattern for your lineage, your blood lineage, your planet lineage, the human family lineage, and everybody and everything. You have that opportunity. Once we know, knowledge is power, now we're accountable. I would say, don't waste mad, make the revolution. Okay? Real talk. Okay? So, Ashe to all of the great ancestors and shoulders of those we stand on. We won't forget you. Thank you for your life. Bless this event, those here, those unseen. Bless this event and bless each and every person in this audience and your families. Let the healing continue. And now I'd like to turn it over to the incredible, phenomenal, my mentee friend and sister friend, Carol Mitchell.
Thank you, Fatima and Kalia. Where is she? Yes, go ahead. Thank you for that blessing. It's always inspiring to share space, especially with gifted, talented cultural curators and soon-to-be artists on the top 10. I don't know if I'll put you on the R&B or on the hip-hop charts, but in the top 10, wherever you show up. Keep going. We've invited you here tonight with a divine intent. And it's divine because you could have been anywhere else tonight except here. You had options. You could have stayed home. You could have been at a football game, at a lacrosse game. One friend of mine said she was going to. But our intent tonight was to create a safe and a sacred space for a very personal conversation that is about to be had among friends. And tonight we're going to talk about some of the pain, the potential gain, some of the lessons, the sorrows that arise when people of color and lawyers of color step into courtrooms that were never really designed for them to be in. And we step into those courtrooms asking to be treated equitably and fairly, hoping that our melanated skin is not a factor in how the judge or the jury sees us, how our lawyers on the other side treat us and respond to us. It's our prayer, it's our hope that when we step into that courtroom, justice really is going to be blind. And yet today, you're going to hear some rather disturbing examples of why that is still not true. And the implications of that unfairness for plaintiffs is real. What it means is that innocent people who are harmed cannot trust our court system to provide them a remedy. And you know, sometimes we wonder why people take matters into their own hands. Some of you know what I mean. It's like, why are they shooting and killing each other? Or why are they fighting like that? Why? How many shows have you seen recently with the word wars at the end? Parkland wars and neighbor wars and you name it. There's a lack of confidence in the system that's supposed to resolve our conflicts and our grievances. Tonight, we're going to talk about this issue from the standpoint of the plaintiffs. So that's the person coming in who has had some sort of harm and now wants to be made whole by the system. And why plaintiffs? Why not defendants? Because I too am a plaintiff. And I got to decide tonight what we talked about. I too am a plaintiff. I have been in the situation of experiencing harm, being demoted, fired, talked about, maligned, because I objected to discrimination. I've been that person who filed a whistleblower complaint and stepped into the administrative courts only to be told, you don't have a claim. Who knew that being demoted and maligned and terminated was insufficient to qualify as a claim? Who knew? I'm not bitter. And part of why I'm not bitter is because I am a woman full of faith. Because I have an ancestral history of overcoming. Because I know that if my mothers and grandmothers made it through the Middle Passage, I can make it through this.
Yes, yes.
Their blood, their DNA is in me. And so when Vonda Sargent steps into a courtroom on behalf of a client that's been harmed and is immediately aware of what she's up against, I I imagine that Vonda brings forward that middle passage energy into that courtroom. If you've never seen Vonda in action, there's some power inside of Vonda Sargent. Dr. Carolyn Weisz today is going to try to explain to us why this kind of ism and schism still exists. Why are we still racist? We're some of the most educated people on the planet, and yet we still have this inequity in our justice system. Why? Where does the bias come from? Why is it so hard for us to address it? To even be aware that that's what we're doing when we're sitting on a jury and we see the plaintiff walk in her 9-inch heels and her short skirt and her breastises hanging out a certain way. And our brain begins to judge whether she is worthy of a remedy. Why does that happen? We're going to give you some sociological research tonight. This is going to be a lesson in experience. Vonda Sargent's going to talk about her experience as a lawyer in a particular set of cases that she has argued all the way to the Washington Supreme Court. We're going to find out the status. Try to make sense of it all for us. So, I want to get started and allow them a moment to just tell you who they are. And I think if you stand when you're doing that, it might be easier for the back to hear. And then I've got 5 or 6 questions for them to help us get a better understanding of what the issues are and maybe some sense of a rationale for why we still have this problem, and what should systems do about it, what should we as individuals do about it, because the harm that happens before you get to the courthouse should not be exacerbated after you get in there. You shouldn't be worse off. All right, I'm off my soapbox. Let me just say, weeping endures for a night, but joy comes in the morning. And for Carol Mitchell's case, joy has come. Interceding, go ahead, Sally, you can take that. They were interceding on my behalf, praying with me, praying for me, and I can tell you in a couple of weeks or so, you'll know why I'm saying joy has come from Carol Mitchell.
Okay.
All right? All right, that's all I can say without getting in trouble. So now, let me just have Vonda take the stand, take the witness stand, tell you a little bit about who she is, and maybe Vonda, go ahead and answer the first question about how it is that you're here tonight talking about bias in the civil justice system. By the way, we went to law school together, but one of us is older. Older, Vonda Sargent, everybody.
I'm here tonight because I tried a case, supposed to be a simple car crash case. The name of the case is Henderson versus Thompson. My client's a black woman, I'm a black woman. The defendant, the person who hit my client, is a white woman, and their attorney was a white woman. and the judge was on. And am I being taped? Videotaped? I swear just a little bit.
It's by the IBK. So you could.
And the thundering began.
Yeah.
Okay. My client has Tourette's. She had Tourette's since she was 5. And you can age out of Tourette's. I didn't know that. But you can age out of Tourette's. And she was starting to age out of Tourette's. And she got hit at 40 miles per hour and it exacerbated her condition. And the insurance company didn't believe her. So they had someone following her around. And they had 86 hours and 14 minutes of videotape that they took of her. They gave me 17 minutes of it. In that 17 minutes, they cobbled together with her looking fine, doing fine. And when that happens, you're supposed to get what's called a spoliation instruction. And that's an instruction that tells the jurors, there's this evidence over here, and I didn't have any access to it. And they refused to give it to me. And because they refused to give it to me, I get to tell you, they didn't give it to me because it wasn't beneficial to them. And you shall, not you may, but you shall, when you're determining the harm to my client, that they didn't give it to me because it wasn't beneficial to them. That's a very strong instruction. And I got that instruction initially. It was just me, the other white woman, and the judge. But then my black client came into the courtroom. My first day of trial, she has Tourette's. So she's grunting, jerking, twitching, and making people generally uncomfortable. She made the judge uncomfortable, and the judge took my instruction. That was the beginning of it. The judge then proceeded to make me give up my cross-examination questions. You probably watch court TV or something. That's the funnest part of the trial. You don't have to give up those questions. That's the dun dun dun. That's that moment. That's a, boom, I'm gonna get you. I caught you in a lie. I had to give up my cross-examination questions. When you're in a trial, there are objections. And when one party objects, the other one gets to respond. It's not just objection and sustained. It's objection, well, this is what I meant it for. You get to explain to the court that I'm moving under this rule. The defendant objected. I stood up and said, went to explain why I want this evidence in. And the judge says to me, Ms. Sargent, don't argue. Actually, he said it like this. Ms. Sargent, don't argue with me in front of the jury. Bitch, what? I can't say that, but I'm rocked. The jury's looking at me, and the implication is when they're not in the courtroom, I'm arguing with them. When in fact, I'm just doing my job, so I have to go and suck her ass. I'm sorry.
I want that in her year of law school, but I
Yeah.
fuck of me.
But another thing about our careers is I'm a trauma lawyer. That is what I do. I try cases. I sue cops and I sue corporations. I represent people.
Yes.
I represent you guys.
Okay.
And the reason why we're not talking about defendants is because there's only 2 types of law. And I'm going to get back to what I was talking about. There's civil law and there's criminal law. That's it. And in criminal law, the defendant are the people. And the plaintiff is the government. In civil law, the plaintiff is the people. And the defendant is a quasi-governmental agencies, insurance companies, or the biggest pimps on the face of the earth. Major corporations, government agencies, those are the defendants. That's why we will never talk about defendants, because they're not discriminating against. They have all the power. They have everything. They have everything. That's why we're not talking about defendants. As far as civil law goes. We will talk about defendant Matty Ellis, defendant person. That's the difference. You will never have a symposium where you go to and you have somebody talking about, oh, we're being discriminated against. Now, I just told you my first lie. Because the case, and I'm going to get back to where we were, but the case, the Henderson case, is now before the United States Supreme Court. So that's my next step. That's what I'm doing now. Because the quasi-governmental agency is saying we're being discriminated against because what do you mean you can't tell them that they want to have sex with the doctor to get favorable testimony? That was another thing I was arguing.
Try to speak up, please.
Another portion of the case that was argued was that the defense said that my client had more than just a patient-client relationship with her doctor. She said exactly this. She has more than a patient-client relationship with her doctor, not to mean anything untoward. That's what she said. So we all know if you say, well, I don't really have hair like that, wait, nah. Yeah, she's fucking her doctor, so you come and testify on her behalf. So that was another thing that happened in this trial. It's another thing. My client has had Tourette's since she was 5 years old, so her medical records span this table. And the defense attorney would walk over, grab a sheet. Ms. Henderson, on March 17, 1987, what doctor did you go see? No, I kid you not. She'd ask her those questions, and I would object, and they'd be overruled. Until finally it got so ridiculous, I objected, the judge sustained it, but the defense attorney didn't stop until she got it. And as a result of my client saying that she didn't know, I don't know what doctor I saw 17 years ago. I don't know what doctor I saw 21 years ago. I don't know well, it was Dr. Jones. What did he treat you for? I don't know, was the answer. That turned into my black client being combative. And that was argued to the jury. But it doesn't stop there. Her client cried the entire time. White, you know what white women's tears do? And if you don't know, raise your hand and I'll tell you what a white woman's tears do. Any brown person in this room. The white woman cried, but only when the jury was present.
Yeah.
Only when the jury was present. When the jury left, she's kicking up, having a good time, and unbeknownst to me, my client snapped a picture. I couldn't use it in my argument, but she snapped a picture, and I was like, hey, that's how she's chucking it up, having a good time, having a blast. So we had this whole series of events that occurred in this trial. And what I did was, we have this rule called General Rule 37. And it was designed for criminal cases. It was designed to address bias and racism in criminal cases alone. And I said, oh no, wait, hold on. Most of us don't engage. By us, I mean black folks. Most black people don't engage with the criminal justice system. Most of us will never be arrested, will never be charged, will never be in a courtroom as a criminal defendant. But we do access the civil justice system. Anytime you sign a contract, anytime you buy a car, anytime you have rent a hotel room, all that's civil. All of that is civil. And so what I said to the Supreme Court was, wait a minute. You expect that these jurors that you want to address in this criminal case, they're racist in this criminal case, but when they cross the threshold to deal with me in my civil case, all that racism goes away? Because they're not in an orange jumpsuit, but a brown business suit, the racism goes away. The court said, you know, you're right, we're going to listen to this case. And they took my case on direct review. What that means is I didn't have to go to a lower court. I went straight from the trial court and hustled on up to the Supreme Court and said, hey,
Yes.
this is some bullshit.
Yes.
Some straight up fucking.
Yes.
And it's racist, and it's out of control, and my client suffered for it.
On this side here.
But one last thing, one last fact. The judge removed my client from the courtroom. This is a civil case where you have an absolute right. She brought the case. She brought the case. She paid Robe. Well, I wrote the check. But wrote the check. It's her case. It's Henderson versus Thompson. And the jury came out and said, hey, we want her out. And the judge said, Ms. Sargent, we're going to have her leave. And I said, wait, we can't do that. Well, I'll have everyone leave the courtroom. I said, you can't do that either. Miss Sargent, she's gonna leave. Yes, ma'am. She kicked her out of the courtroom. So that let me know where the jury was going, but that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here.
Their emotional reactions in their bodies plays one role in the kind of bias that might show up in courtrooms. And the message I'm going to kind of say, and this will be over a few questions, so cut me off whenever you want, is that what's inside of individuals, of people, from a psychology perspective, is very much a reflection of the world in which we all live. So I'm not going to give you the lecture on the history of racism in the United States, but if you live in it, you probably know it. If you studied it, and I know the conversation does a lot of that studying, you know that it is ubiquitous in every system we live in. We, in the United States, but you know, we look at other places, you know, we're in a place where we've had, you know, violence against indigenous peoples and slavery and then systemic legal and de facto segregation, discrimination in employment and housing. And so when you look right now at the world, you see the legacy of that in enormous gaps in wealth, in enormous forms of segregation in schools, in housing, in all kinds of things. And what is inside of people is very much a reflection of the fact that from the youngest age, children have learned directly and indirectly to make sense of those inequities in the world. This really sad part, I'm going to start with the sad and difficult part, and later we'll talk about what to do about it, is that it happens even when children are also taught about equity, diversity, love, inclusion, that they see the world as it is, who lives in what kinds of houses. And so one study, well, you didn't ask me about studies yet, so you want me to sit down and we'll go back and forth?
Let me get to it.
Okay, you get there.
Finish your thought,
Okay,
though.
so let's see if there was anything else by way, because I'm going to tell you about some studies, but yeah, I'll say one more thing about theoretical about the why. So human beings, we're all human beings, and we are evolutionarily programmed to do certain things, to categorize. Because if you're anything like me, you know your short-term memory doesn't work that well. You can't hold enormous, complex sets of information in your brain. So you categorize things. Not always just in two categories, but in two categories. And that is a way of oversimplifying the world to be able to perceive it as controllable and to make decisions for survival. So we categorize. The other thing we do, we pay attention, we think categorically, we think socially, because we are social beings. We survive because we live in community. And so we have evolved to pay attention to who is in our group, who will protect us, who can we cooperate with, who is a threat. So the in-group, out-group distinction, which is at the root of a lot of times bias, or even put race into it, is part of what we are programmed to be aware of, sensitive to, quickly develop. Categories, social categories. And then third, we are programmed to respond to threat, to pay attention to threat, to interpret threat, to develop responses to threat. And when you put stereotypes and disparities in the world and things that happen that are related to crime in the legal system into the mix, humans, you know, it sort of sets the stage rife for some pretty nasty stuff. So that's where I'm going to stop.
So we categorize, we pay attention to threats.
We're social.
We're socialized to do that. And then Vonda Sargent comes into a courtroom with her client who has Tourette's. And Vonda, what do you say to lawyers who might be in the room today, because there are some, and to judges who witness this almost, I would say, inherent response that the jury was having to your client, that the other lawyer was having? You know you know the judge is witnessing it, can see it happening. What do you say to them now that you're not in that courtroom? What would you have said, or what would you have liked to say?
That's almost an impossible question for me to answer for a couple of reasons. What happens in any trial that you have? If the trial is about race, people step up to the mat. If I have a case, I sue police officers, shooting and killing people, beating them up. If that case is about race, and you tell people, black, white, Asian, indigenous, whomever, that this case is about race, people will step up. And they will be in that space, and they'll go, all right, now we're talking about racism. The reason why I can't answer that question is because this case, the Henderson case, wasn't about race. It was interjected into the case. And what I have learned, and what studies that I have read, and all the work that I've done, is that when white people particularly are confronted with or it's introduced to that subtle racism, that just, it's insidious, y'all just slide into it.
Yeah.
You just slide into it because it's comfortable, it's, oh yeah, that makes sense. Now that's not an indictment. It's not an indictment on white people anymore than it is on black people or Asian people or Native American people. It's not an indictment on anybody. It's just the way, like the good doctor said, our society is. So the reason, Carol, that I can't answer that question, what I would say to the judges, because it's too slippery. You can't put your hands around it. You have to wait. You have to let it play out. And then you have to bring your receipts and say, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And the cumulative effect of all those things that happen leads us to this conclusion. Because you can always take one instance, well, you know, they didn't mean it that way. Oh, well, you know, you can explain it away this way. Well, you know, that she didn't really mean it like that. Like, aren't you being too sensitive? That's how that always happens. And so we have a rule now. We have a rule in our state, and it's the only one in the nation. It's the only rule in that, General Rule 37. We are the only ones that have it. And it was only for criminal cases. And now we're the only ones that have it for civil cases. And it says this, that if an objective observer who is aware of implicit and unconscious bias looks at the issues that you were complaining of or raising, and they could find that race was a part of it, you get a new trial. That's on the criminal side. I took a little bit further for the civil side because it's expensive. It's expensive to try cases. I don't think people really understand how expensive it is. Who remembers Richard Pryor? Yes. Just us white folks. What he was talking about is how expensive it is to get justice in this country. It is terribly expensive. The Henderson case, I'm into it, several hundreds of thousands of dollars. Hard money, checks written, depositions, experts, travel expenses. It's expensive. So what I did with this rule, that was for the criminal arena, is I said, well, wait a minute. What can happen in a civil case is they can see that they're losing, throw a little bit of, sprinkle a little racism in there. Well, we get a new trial now. I'm out of, $387,000, but you got a new trial. So what I got is, we get a new trial, and you got to pay for my costs and attorneys.
Amen.
And you got to pay for my costs. That's why it's going up to the Supreme Court. The United States.
Yeah.
Yes.
That and the fact that the burden now is no longer that I have to prove what it was that you said was racist. You have to disprove it. You have to explain why you said that bullshit. Now the burden is on you, and they don't like that shit. Because our court now understands that you can always have a race-neutral neutral reason for anything that you say. Anything. There will always be a race neutral reason. Always. And there are example after example after example. I kicked all the black people off of the panel because they didn't look like they were paying attention. That's race neutral. That's race neutral. I kicked all the Asian people off the panel because I wasn't so certain that they understood English. That's race neutral. Absolutely. All of that's race. I kicked all of the indigenous people off of the panel because they weren't giving me eye contact. That's race neutral. These are all examples that were given. There will always be a race neutral reason for engaging in racism. You can always explain it away. We've been doing it for years. Years, hundreds of years. So that, Carol, is why there's nothing that I could say to anybody. You have to see it through.
Just let it play out.
You have to.
All right.
You know, but it was the first one. So now we don't have to let it play out anymore. We stop and we say, excuse me. And here's the deal. It's mandatory. You shall have what's called an evidentiary hearing. Not maybe, not you could. Once you raise the issue, once I stand up in court and say, Your Honor, may I be heard? Outside the president of the jury. So this happened, and this happened, Your Honor. And I think it's biased. So let's have an evidentiary hearing. Don't want to have that, let me just fix that real quick. Or you have an evidentiary hearing. But you shall have an evidentiary hearing. You shall. Period. End of discussion. And the party that is engaged in that conduct now has the burden of explaining why they did all of that little slick trick stuff. That's why it's huge. I can't. This case, Henderson versus Thompson, is as big as Brown versus Board of Education. It is that. In the nation, and they're trying to reverse it back. So,
And your name is on that case.
it's huge.
That's powerful.
It's huge.
I want you to, I know you want to react to some of the things that Vonda was saying, but can you also speak to those individuals who say, I don't see color? And where you think that's coming from, and how do we respond to people who say, I don't see race, I don't see color? What's the appropriate socio-psychological response? And then I'll have Vonda give me her response.
So if I can say that, I know I can say that.
No, black people do not say that.
I've not ever heard.
I actually have, but I'll talk about that a little. But first I want to say I wasn't going to talk about every theory under the sun, but if you need more expert witnesses, I can hook you up with the folks. There's a theory of aversive racism. I don't know if you ran across it in your reading, but it's exactly what you said. How slippery it is, how there's always a non-racial explanation for discriminatory behavior, whether it's in housing or employment. And maybe not always, but especially when there's any ambiguity, which there almost always is, because behavior is complex with multiple reasons. So there's people who can speak to that, but the part of it that I can't say is true of attorneys, not you, but other attorneys, is whether it really is unconscious and not deliberate. Because a lot of prejudice is deliberate. They're trying to win their case. But if I'm talking about everyday people,
Are you mixing prejudice and racism?
I am, because sometimes
They're different though, right?
they're different and they
We'll have
can
time
be
for
similar.
Q&A, I promise.
Yeah, we'll have Q&A because they're not the exact, they are clearly, you're right, they are not the same. But I'm speaking from, it's all jargon, like the language, we have to negotiate that in the room. That in my field, prejudice is the word we use for the umbrella of things that include cognitive bias and stereotypes, everything from like emotional, favoritism and aversion, and then discriminatory behavior. And racism, sexism, homophobia are all the particular historical ways in which those psychological phenomenon then can manifest. So I'm just going to say it's not the same as racism because racism has got that whole bag of such a deep cultural, systemic, institutional history. But from a psychology perspective, that's some of what I'm talking about. I don't know if that helps. We'll just sit on that and we can come back to it later. So, but aversive racism, the theory, is just what Vonda, but I didn't want to call you by your first name, but I don't know if you call you Attorney Sargent. So back to Carol's question. So she was going to ask me, and I did want to share what that bias can look like. There's so many places it comes from. I can't give you the whole semester-long, 4-year class right now, but I think the question about what we sometimes call color blindness, which is the philosophy that one way to reduce the interpersonal or like common kind of bias and racism is to not think about race, it just isn't true. And I don't think I have to convince anybody in this audience, but there are people for whom, and I have met folks of color that say, why are we using these racist categorical terms since the problem is categorical thinking and stereotyping? If we got rid of the race labels, the census, the other things, wouldn't we be better off? Wouldn't racism go away? No. And exactly. So that's what Carol's asking me to explain to you, if you're in that camp, whether you are a person of color or a white person, why that's probably not going to get us to where we need to be. And there's a lot of different reasons. But one thing I will share is some of the research on children and how they pick up prejudice, bias, and stereotypes even when it is not explicitly taught to them with labels and with stereotypes. So for example, in studies that don't include race, that aren't about racism, and so they have children watching a white adult treat one white person better than another, giving them a toy, smiling at them, kind of ignoring the other. And then they ask the child, which person of the two so not the, I don't know if it was a teacher, but not the leader model, but the other two people, which one do you like better? And the children like the person who was treated better. Again, children quickly think very simplistically, if that person was treated positively, they must be a good person. And there's all kinds of theories about that. It happens non-verbally. Nobody said this is a bad person. Okay, now I'm going to make it even more scary. Sometimes they said, this person's wearing a red t-shirt, therefore they're on the red team. And this is their friend who's also on the red team. And then later they asked, they should have the two friends, the friend from the red team and the friend from the blue team, about whom they never saw any treatment or any behavior. And they say, which person do you want to give this toy to? Which person do you like better? Who's a better person? And the children say, the friend of the person who had been treated better. So that's called generalization by groups. If one person is getting good outcomes or being treated well, or has a job as a doctor, or owns a big house, I'm just extrapolating here, the way racial disparities look in the world, children are programmed to notice that, and there's a theory called just world beliefs. If somebody gets good outcomes, they must be a good person. If somebody got arrested, they must be a bad person. If somebody got fired, they must be a bad person. They must deserve it. Evolutionarily, again, I can't tell you because I don't know why that is, but there's lots of evidence for that kind of thinking. And in part it may be because people want to believe the world is a fair and controllable place. That if you act in a good way, you will be able to have confidence you'll get good outcomes. But it has this nasty side. And it comes without any labels, without putting, so I'm just saying, like, you put race on top of that and the disparities that are institutional, that are the results of institutional racism, you got a hot mess. And then one other finding, can I go for a little longer? I haven't even got to the
You can go for a little longer and give us your final thoughts, and then we'll have Vonda give hers and open it up for a few questions.
Okay. I'm not going to talk about what to do about it, I'll let someone ask. But just going to give a classic study that's important to me because these are the things do this work, that there's evidence with white college students, diverse college students, police officers, that they view black boys to be older than they are, more muscular, less innocent, more deserving of harsher punishment. These, when we say bias, I just wanted to share that in the legal perspective, these are a big deal because if people aren't aware they do it. Psychologists know how to test for these things in a way that if people realize they were doing it, it's more likely to show up when, in the context of a felony cases, when you equate everything, than misdemeanor cases, but it's still, I don't know, but it's still there, you know, but so there's a lot of, you know, it doesn't show up all the time for every person, but given the systemic things in the world, these aren't surprising. So that's just an example of the bias. And then later I can talk about some things. Oh, and just the last thing about color blindness. So a lot of evidence suggests that generally it's white folks who are colorblind, the vast majority. Don't do it. Here's a few reasons. One, look, the world's screwed up. What we really need is fierce social justice advocates, and you can't do it. Or one of them. The other is, it just so happens there's a correlation between believing in those colorblind ideologies and being more prejudiced, so we know that. And then in an employment setting, one more study, if you look at employees of color, and this was a big study, lots of different organizations. In organizations where white folks were more endorsing that colorblind philosophy, that we'll all get along better if we don't talk about and think about race and all that, the black employees were more unhappy and less likely to thrive. So again, lots of different ways of looking at the evidence from lots of angles that, while obviously we need to be, what is the term you use in the legal system? Justice should be colorblind, but we should not, as social justice advocates, be colorblind.
You have time for questions, so we're going to give Vonda maybe a 2-minute summation, some final thoughts about what we can do next. All right, what's next? Now that you've tried Brown v. Board in 2023.
So what can we do next? The good doctor said that we need, I wrote it down, fierce social justice advocates. And I agree with that, to a point. Because I need you on my juries. All right? I need Carol started out saying that she's not angry. I am.
I'm not good.
I'm angry, and I'm angry because you guys come to jury duty, then you just start running your mouths. You start running your mouths, talking about, well, you know, I think that police officers probably shouldn't be doing blah, blah, fill in the blank. Or I think big corporations are terrible and they're horrible to everybody that's a person of color. Or any other thing that will get you kicked off the jury. So yes, we need social justice warriors that are fierce, but you need to be on the down low. I'm on this because here's what happens. Here's what happens with the guys on the other side. The guys on the other side who follow, who's that little skinny dude? Podcast. That guy. Yeah, he wanted to be on my jury on my last trial. Little guys like that. Another guy followed, Andrew Tate. Just all these horrible, wretched, right-wing, just terrible people. But they sat there on that jury just as sweet. Just as sweet. Who can be fit? Oh, absolutely, I can be. Oh, do you have any opinions about filling in race or gender? I'm colorblind. Yeah, I'm colorblind. Meanwhile, all the social justice warriors are like, yeah, here we go. And giving up the ghost. Giving up the ghost. What are you guys doing? Stop it. No, I'm dead ass serious. Stop it. And the last thing I have to say is this. Yeah, you got a job. Absolutely. and yeah, they're paying you 10 or 15 bucks a day. Yes, you're right. But you can't not participate in bitch and piss and moan that nothing changes.
right.
You can't do it.
That's right.
And I'm coming out of pocket.
Yes.
So I can say this.
Yes.
I can look every one of you in the eye and say unequivocally, stop not going to jury duty. Because you're not going to get paid. Yes. Stop. You gotta go to jury duty. And you gotta sit there and stop telling on yourself.
Yes.
Just sit there on the interview.
So how do you recommend like answering those questions for somebody who hasn't even had jury duty?
Q&A is coming, I
Oh, yeah.
promise.
So those are my final words. Is that I need you guys.
Thank you.
All of them. I mean, who shows up? Trump supporter.
Yeah.
And their cousins. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And they're willing to eat the top ramen and then the watered down rice and chicken bouillon
Yeah.
so they can maintain the status quo.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're over here going, well, if we just do things right way, we're gonna get things. No, we're not. You gotta act like them. Come on now. You gotta act like them.
Yeah.
We're in war.
Yes.
We have a cultural war right now in our country.
Yes. Yes.
And we want to try to play by the rules.
Okay.
Meanwhile, they're kicking the shit out of us.
For real.
So, that's my
Okay, we've got 10 minutes, and we're going to close at exactly 6:59. Those of you who deal with me, you know, we run on time. So I know that there, oh, look at all the hands. Why don't those of you who have a question, we'll start in the back rows. Just popcorn up. You, sir, I think you're the furthest back.
Perfect.
And to whom is your question being directed? The doctor or the lawyer?
I think my question would be directed to the professor. You mentioned earlier that you're a proponent of science, number 2. My
Say that
question
again,
is,
Peter.
proponent of science.
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I started off by saying that she mentioned that she was a proponent of science. You know, we all agree to some degree about science. My question is in what way can we educate people about the science of the human species to help alleviate the misconceptions about racial difference and all that good stuff? It's a fallacy.
Yeah. People love easy answers, and science won't give you an easy answer, but neither will anything else. So I think it's more, you know, I'm just going to take it a different direction. Science is where jobs are. Science is where money is. Science is going to add to our knowledge base. Just like we need diverse folks and social justice-minded folk on juries, we need them in science. Yes. So how we get them interested in science could be lots of ways. Starting young, whatever. But I would say for older folks, college students, adults, read this book by a Black woman, Bias. I think it would get people interested. The way I know Carol Mitchell is we were on the board of the Fair Housing Center of Washington for decades, and it's like science when you do testing and you secretly go in and have a white and a black client or whatever the protected class is, go try to get a house. That's like the scientific method. I think when you show people what science can do in terms of knowledge and power, you can rope them in.
All right, we're going to thank you. We're going to switch to this side, and then we'll come back to that side. Sir, I think.
My question was for the
Stand.
my question was for the Army sergeant and the lawyer sergeant. So how do you recommend to answer questions in a non-whistleblower, non-dog whistle kind of way when you go to jury duty for those who are, you know, social justice warriors but are trying to be on the down low and who haven't done jury duty or anything like that?
I can be